everybody, and welcome to the weekly scopes from the 18th to the 24th of May. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's weekly scopes. If you've heard this before, you can skip, but this is just the intro on how I formulate these astrology weekly readings. I use astrology and my intuition to give you advice how you can practically use the knowledge of the stars and the planets and apply them to your life. So my weekly scopes are all based on GMT time and on Vedic Constellational Astrology. So now I'm just going to explain what Vedic Constellational Astrology is and how it differs from Western astrology. So the precession of the equinox is sort of like something that happens in astronomy and astrology, where the Earth's axis undergoes a slow circular motion over 26,000 years, and basically this means that this motion causes a shift in the position of the equinoxes and also the calculation Vedic and Western astrologies use. So around 2,000 years ago, the tropical and sidereal Vedic astrology signs of astrology were aligned in the same position. So if the sun was in Scorpio in Vedic astrology, it was also in the constellation of Scorpio in Western astrology. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, this has caused a gradual westward sort of like drift of the tropical Western signs. So basically these signs and the Western signs shift 1 degree with every 72 years. So as a result of this ongoing shift, when Western astrology says the sun is in the constellation of Pisces, it's typically in the constellation of Aquarius. Still, this is because the degree, orb and the date for Western and Vedic astrology are 24 degrees 24 days apart. So in Western astrology, the sun enters the constellation of Pisces around the 19th of February each year, but actually the sun doesn't arrive into the constellation of Pisces until the 13th to the 15th of March each year. And Vedic astrology takes this into account because it's based on the fixed star positions, and Vedic astrologers use sidereal calculations. So as a result, Vedic astrology takes into account the actual positions of the constellations in the sky at any given time, and also considers the precession of the equinox, adjusting for the shift in the position of the equinoxes over time. But in terms of Western astrology follows the tropical zodiac, which is based on the seasons rather than fixed star positions. Western astrologers also do not directly account for the precession of the equinox in their calculations as well, so this results in slightly different calculations and interpretations that are given whether we're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. So yeah, as I said, Western astrology uses specific dates, so every year, regardless of where the sun actually is at the sky, the sun moves into Pisces around the 19th of February. So yeah, this discrepancy, this misalignment between the tropical zodiac and the actual positions of the constellations has led to a discrepancy between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So I consider the actual where the sun and the moon are and where Mars and Venus are at any given time, and this is how I formulate these sort of like weekly scopes. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, and let's dive into this week's weekly scope. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain what parallels and contra-parallels are in astrology, because I use them in my chart interpretation. So declination in astrology is the measure of how far a celestial body is, such as the sun, whether it's either north or south of the celestial equator. And the celestial equator is an imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator, which us astrologers use in our interpretation. So parallels happen when two planets are on the same declination. Either both planets are on the north side side, or either both planets are on the south side, and this alignment increases the influence of the involved planets. So it's similar to a conjunction aspect, as it amplifies their energy, making the effects of the planets more pronounced. Contra-parallels, on the other hand, happen when two planets are on the same declination, but one is in the north and one is in the south. So this alignment creates tension, which is similar to an opposition aspect, and it can lead to conflict, challenges and inner struggles between the energies of the planets involved. So contra-parallels highlight areas of friction or contrast in our lives, urging us to find balance between the opposing forces at play. When transiting parallels and contra-parallels happen, they can sort of like trigger significant events, shifting consciousness and periods of intense growth and transformation. So I look at these aspects closely during chart analysis to understand how planetary energies interact and influence each other during a specific time frame, to pinpoint key periods for personal development, relationship dynamics or career shifts, and other shifts like karmic shifts and stuff like that. Because I just find using contra-parallels and parallels gives me more depth in interpretation, so I use them. So contra-parallels and parallels in astrology serve as markers for potential challenges or breakthroughs, guiding us towards more self-awareness, love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness for ourselves and others, and shifts in consciousness and growth. So overall, just a shift in our mindset if we allow for it. So parallels and contra-parallels just kind of like provide valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the astrological interactions between planetary movements. So yeah, that's the end of what contra-parallels and parallels are. Okay, so this week we've got a few aspects that are governing us. So the first, we've got Jupiter making a sextile to Chiron. This is exact on the 18th of May. But it entered on the 12th of May, leaving us on the 24th, and Jupiter's in Gemini and Chiron's in Aries. Then we've got Jupiter making a square to the Moon's North Node, and the Moon's North Node is in Pisces, and this is exact also on the 18th and leaves us on the 23rd of May and entered on the 15th of May. Then we've got Chiron making a semi-sextile to the Moon's North Node, and then we've got Saturn making a parallel to the Moon's North Node, and Saturn's in Pisces. And this entered on the 18th of April and leaves us on the 25th of June, so it's going to last us for the next 4 to 5 weeks, and it's already been affecting us for about a month or so. So the positives of this week's main aspects is that they give us the main themes are allowing us to heal, continue with our personal development and growth, and get more in alignment with our goals and stuff like that. So Jupiter sextile Chiron brings a curiosity, a desire for more knowledge, information, upgrading our critical thinking skills that are really needed in today's climate, with all the divisiveness, everybody thinking they're right and the other people are wrong, but it's all about balance. We've all got a sort of like input, all opinions are valid, even if they go against our own personal opinions, and it's when we come to realize this that we can empower each other, empower ourselves, and engage in self-healing. And this energy allows us to deal with our old wounds, expand our understanding of ourselves and others. The universe is kind of handing us a golden ticket right here now to deepen our self-awareness and awareness of other people's different opinions and embrace them as well, and just allowing us to step into our true potential, And Jupiter square to the Moon's North Node allows us to align our personal growth with our true higher consciousness, soul's purpose, Again, allows us to work on our communication and learning. So good for studying, good for motivational talks, good for personal development work as well, and having a spiritual connection to our life, to others, and to really work with our intuition. The square energy is really pushing us to align with our higher purpose and supporting us to make sure that we're on the right path this week, you know. Chiron semi-sextile to the moon's north node again supports us with healing and aligning our relationships, behaviours and thoughts with our soul's journey and our true intentions and our highest potential, you know. Again, allowing us to work on letting go of the things that no longer serves us and encouraging us and supporting us to release old patterns and be more open to a more compassionate way of thinking and living and a more intuitive way of managing our relationships and our life path as well. Saturn also makes a parallel to the moon's north node, so it allows us to work on our commitment and responsibility, and it gives us that grounding energy to do the healing work that the Jupiter and Chiron aspects this week are pushing us. It allows us and supports us with Saturn in Pisces to master our spiritual discipline and discipline over our thoughts and behaviours and the ways we may be toxically relating to ourselves and others. It also allows us to take, and it's a reminder for us to take our spiritual and personal development growth seriously, to work on accepting ourselves and others, our self-awareness, love, responsibility, healing, and it allows us to commit to this journey over the next 4 to 5 weeks, because this aspect's pretty much staying with us to the end of June, right? But negatively, these aspects in terms of the karmic lessons they're trying to make us feel, right? Jupiter square to the moon's north node sometimes can feel like a push and pull between what we want to do and what we're guided to do. This energy is sort of like the universe telling us to slow down and make sure we are aligned with our purpose, but our egos may be screaming, just let me do what I want, so it's about finding that balance between aligning with our purpose and meeting our needs of wanting to have fun and chill out a little bit as well, Chiron's semi-sextile to the moon's north node can just make us feel really hurt, because it's poking at our sore spots. It's pushing us to confront the things we bury, usually with our toxic ways of relating to ourselves and others, overindulging in hookups, drugs, alcohol, anything else that's toxic to us in excess, because I believe everything's okay in balance. So although it can feel uncomfortable, it reminds us that healing isn't always easy, and sometimes it feels worse before it gets better. And the sun's parallel to the moon's north node can just make us feel like we're not moving forward as quickly as we're like, and it can just feel like this energy, Saturn energy over the next 4 to 6 weeks, like the brakes are being put on us, but really Saturn just wants us to slow down, making sure that we're building solid foundations. So what are foundations? Making sure we're not just looking at the bigger picture and taking care of the smaller details. So you may want to be a doctor, you may want to be an artist or a writer. Okay, so you need to have a routine, right? To bedtime, maybe a time for studying, a time for relaxation, a time to manage your other commitments like date nights if you've got any children, paying bills and all of that. So it's about getting real. Saturn always wants us to get real. It's saying, yeah, you want to be the best, you want to reach your highest potential. What are you prepared to do for it? Are you prepared to commit to going to bed at 7 to 8 and 9 p.m. sometimes, because you have to be up at 5 and 4 p.m. to reach your goals, and it wants us to build the solid routine before we keep on going. So the best use of this week's energy is to use Jupiter's sextile Chiron to dig deep into our healing journey, whether it's through therapy, journaling or spiritual or other psychological emotional practices. It's a time to confront our old wounds and expand our self-awareness. Jupiter square to the moon's north node wants us to reflect on our life purpose, asking ourselves, am I aligned with my soul's journey? Am I growing in the ways that feel meaningful? It's a great time to journal or meditate on these questions and any other questions you come up with. And Chiron's semi-sextile to the moon's north node also wants us to let go of the habits, the relationships, the toxic thoughts, boundaries, that are not serving us, and set new boundaries and release toxic vibes, relationships and behaviours, and being open to a more compassionate way of connecting with others and yourself, And Saturn's parallel to the Moon's North Node, it reminds us to take our growth seriously, and to remember it's about committing to a daily practice, the daily changes, the small steps each day, not just focusing on the bigger picture, whether it's doing more meditation, exercise, yoga, tai chi, and taking time to connect with your intuition and your higher self, being more optimistic and curious, having that growth mindset this week. A lot of these aspects are helping us to overcome our past pain, although it can feel challenging. This week's energy is like having a wise mentor in our corner, cheering us on, motivating us through our emotional drama terrain, and allowing us to align with our ambitions and our true goals. Think about it like having a GPS, right, that's always adjusting and changing our route. It can feel frustrating when it gives us one direction, when the sat nav, the GPS gives us one direction, it changes it because there's been traffic or whatever, but ultimately it's guiding us towards our true destination in the quickest amount of time, even though some of you may think, hey, I should have been here years ago, while some of you it may take 20 years to get to where you want to get to, and that's what Saturn's energy reminds us of in astrology. So Chiron semi-sextile the Moon's North Node wants us to be aware of how our interactions, our communication with others reflect our inner state, be more curious and keyed on to practicing actively listening and the way that we speak. A lot of the time it's not the way we want things to be done or the way we speak. Well, it is the way we speak, it's not the way let me just say what I want to say. It's not what we're saying, it's the way that we say it. It's not what we're doing, it's the way that we do it, right? So the universe is slowly whispering to us this week. The way that we show up in our relationship is a mirror of our own inner healing journey. Saturn's parallel to the Moon's North Node wants us to be more serious and take more responsibility in our day-to-day life, and it wants us to be more self-reflective and deep in thought about our lives, and maybe create or revise a year plan or 2 or 5 year plan, writing down your goals, writing down how you can strategically work on the bigger goals day by day, and Saturn's energy is all about reminding us that true growth requires discipline and patience. So combining these aspects this week wants us to clear out the old, be more self aware and empowered, and work on our self-worth and values. It wants us to rewrite old narratives and stories that are holding us back, and build more strength and resilience as well, and ensuring our actions and desires are in harmony with what we truly want, and to have check-ins with ourselves, to make sure we're on the right track, whether it's journaling our thoughts, creating a life plan, like I said, revising a life plan. It's basically wanting us to break free from cycles that are keeping us stuck, and we're being reminded and supported by these aspects this week to be more compassionate. The universe is saying to us, you've got this. For some of you, you've been on that healing journey, and now it's time to start sharing this wisdom with the world. So don't think about, there's lots of influencers now out there saying this and that, and it's moving towards niche communities. People want niche communities to feel connected with the people who are giving them advice. So everyone's got their own niche, everybody's got their 100 to 2,000 people. Some people may have more reach, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, but everyone's got their community that will only listen to the things that you say in the way that you say it, regardless if someone else is saying it or doing it or not. So remember, the world needs it. So content creators can create content this week about building self-awareness, working on our personal growth, sharing stories and how we can build our resilience, our stay in power, how we can overcome our life challenges, adversity, how we can manage our mental and emotional and spiritual well-being more, and giving practical tips on how we can heal and growth, how we can work on our relationships and find our life purpose if we're feeling stuck. A lot of us do, and sometimes we can compare our journeys to others, and this can keep us stuck. But creating content that encourages people to work with their their own cycles, their own emotional needs, their own psychological and spiritual needs and environment, and their own lifestyles. You know, some of us have children, some of us don't. Some of us want children, some of us don't. Some of us want £1 million in the bank. Some of us just want to be able to pay our bills on time each month and have a little bit left over to go to a movie or on a drive or go to our favourite restaurant once a month. You know, it's about finding out what you want from life rather than following what everyone else says that you should want from life. You know, so just, you know, content that helps people find their purpose and reflect on their needs as well, and that focuses on the importance of spiritual and other discipline and taking accountability and responsibility on our journey to reaching our goals, right? And, you know, talking about how we can release old toxic thought patterns, questioning our values. Are they really our values? Are values our parents told us to have, or friends or lovers or society? You know, being open and giving tips on how we can let go of those things that no longer serve us, especially toxic relationships and habits, you know, and how we can be more compassionate with ourselves and others as we do this, as we make the changes. Changes don't come overnight. We can sometimes take one step forward and 1,000,000 steps back, but that doesn't mean we should give up. You know, talking about how we can keep on going after each failure and how, you know, failure is part of the process, offering practical tips on how to be open to healing and growth, giving tips on how we can build more journaling into our life, meditation, exercise and creativity, how we can build more self-love, healthy self-love practices and healthy self-awareness and self-management practices into our life, you know, and how we can explore our patterns more, and, you know, maybe just sharing stories of your own journey and other people who have overcome their life adversities, their life challenges to reach their full potential, you know, and focusing on, you know, the fact that growth is not a straight line. It's often circular, as is healing, and just giving inspirational content to help people with their healing journey. So yeah, so now I'm just going to talk about the aspects day to day that are affecting us. These aspects typically last sometimes a day or two, you know. So on the 18th of May we've got the Sun making a conjunction to Uranus, and this is exact at 33 minutes past midnight. We've got Venus making a semi-square to Uranus. This is exact at 1:37 a.m. and all times are based on British Summer Time. Now we've got Mercury making a square to Mars, and this is exact at 5:56 a.m. We've got Mercury making a semi-square to Saturn, and this is exact at 12:46 p.m. Jupiter making its exact sextile to Chiron at 2:45, and Jupiter square that's affecting us all of this week, making its exact, you know, touching yeah, at 7:46 p.m. So yeah, the Sun's conjunction to Uranus happens when the Sun's in Taurus, and so is Uranus in Taurus. The Venus's semi-square to Uranus happens when Venus is in Taurus. Mercury square to Mars happens when Mercury is in Aries and Mars is in Cancer. Mercury semi-square to Saturn happens when Saturn's in Pisces. So yeah, Jupiter's sextile to Chiron and Jupiter square to the Moon's North Node leaves us on the 24th of May, and I talked about these aspects already. So the Sun's conjunction to Uranus supports us to break free from our comfort zone this week, and it gives us that wake-up call to be open to change and try something new, right? Venus's semi-square to Uranus also supports us to have unpredictability in our relationships, to have out there date nights now, giving us the time and space to spice up things in our self-partnered relationship, or our relationship with our friends or with our intimate partners, and be open to exploring new relationships as well. It also supports us and reminds us to communicate honestly and openly to avoid misunderstandings, because Uranus in relationships can always bring, you know, unpredictableness, people over promising, people getting lost in the moment, like, oh, I'm going to love you for life, but, you know, tomorrow comes and they no longer love you, so just be aware of that. Mercury square to Mars helps us to be motivated, and it supports us to take action on our ideas and push through the challenges that come this week. But we just have to remember not to let our emotions get the best of us, course. Mercury is semi-square to Saturn, wants us to focus on discipline. It's a great energy to use to get serious about our goals and commitments and to be patient with ourselves and others. But negatively, Mercury square to Mars can make us feel restless and impulsive and make us do things that we shouldn't do and say things that we shouldn't say and overstep people's boundaries because we're acting without thinking, you know, and this can lead to unnecessary conflicts, arguments and blow-ups, you know. Mercury square to Mars and Mercury semi-square to Saturn, you know, really can make communication challenging over the next couple of days. We can feel like we're not being heard, others can feel like they're not being heard by us, and we can just be too critical. So just, you know, try and be patient and open to change and make sure you communicate your needs clearly and respect other people's boundaries and only say the things that you really mean, you know. Don't just pillow talk because this can lead people on and cause unnecessary drama, you know. The best use of today's energy is to use the Sun's conjunction to Uranus to be open to new opportunities and ideas and not to be afraid to step outside of your comfort zone and try something different. Use Mercury square to Mars and Mercury semi-square to Saturn to be mindful of how you communicate. Take a deep breath before speaking and try to listen as much as you talk, you know. Spice up your relationship. Use Venus's semi-square to Uranus to bring some excitement to your relationships. Try new things and be open to change, but also make sure to communicate your needs. Use Mercury semi-square to Saturn to get serious about your goals and set clear intentions and stay committed to what you want to achieve, you know, over the coming week. On the 19th of May, Venus makes a quintile to Jupiter, Chiron makes a semi-sextile to the Moon's North Node, the Moon enters void of course, Mars also makes a sesquiquadrate to Saturn, Mercury also makes a semi-square to Neptune. So Mars' sesquiquadrate to Saturn, it's kind of like a square, you know, energy. It wants us to find balance between action and discipline. It wants us to focus on our goals and supports us to, you know, stay committed. Mercury semi-square to Neptune wants us to work with our intuition and creativity. It's a great time to trust our gut and explore our creative side. We just have to be careful not to get lost in our thoughts. Venus makes a quintile to Jupiter and it wants us to work and supports us to work on our relationships and creativity and connect with others, explore new opportunities. But negatively, these aspects, especially Mars' sesquiquadrate to Saturn, can make us feel like we're hitting a wall. So it's important to stay patient and focus on our goals. Mercury semi-square to Neptune can make us feel a bit lost or unsure. So it's important to trust our intuition and take things one step at a time rather than rushing, you know. The best use of this energy is to, you know, use it to stay disciplined and focus on our goals. And remember, if you put in the hard work and get back up after each failure, you will see the results eventually. Mercury semi-square to Neptune allows us to tap into our intuition and explore our creative side. We just have to be careful not to get lost in our thoughts, right? And Venus's quintile to Jupiter, nice settled energy that allows us to connect with our inner world and others' inner world as well, and to build positive relationships and be open to happiness, you know. On the 20th of May, the Moon enters Aquarius at 3:06 a.m. The Sun makes a sextile to Saturn at 10:39 a.m. The Moon enters its last quarter moon phase at 12:59 p.m. The Moon's North Node goes direct at 1:06 and the Sun makes a sextile to Saturn on the 20th at 10:39 a.m. The Sun makes a sextile to Saturn. So today's aspects allow us to reflect and stay disciplined, right? The Moon in Aquarius is all about innovation, trying new things, working with others, you know, thinking outside of the box. It allows us to work on ideas, new ideas, and, you know, it gives us a desire to work with others as well. The last quarter moon is all about self-reflection and reflecting on the previous, last couple of weeks, looking back at our progress and letting go of what no longer serves us. The Moon's North Node turning direct allows us to be more clear in our thinking and speaking. It can be like the fog has lifted and we can finally see a path forward. The Sun sextile to Saturn is a powerful aspect for disciplined progress. It's a great time to focus on our goals and stay committed to the journey. But negatively, the Moon in Aquarius can sometimes sometimes feel unpredictable, making us feel restless or emotionally detached. And sometimes it can just feel like we're not moving fast enough because of the last quarter moon energy, you know. And remember, this is a time for reflection, not rushing, you know. So the best use of these aspects is to work with others, look at and continue or start the work of letting go of what's holding you back from being your best self, you know, thinking outside of the box and focusing on your goals and staying committed as well. On the 21st of May, there's nothing to report. On the 22nd of May, we've got a lot going on, right? So we've got Venus making a quintal to Pluto at 2:05 a.m. and Venus is in Pisces and Pluto's in Capricorn. The moon enters void of course at 3:21 a.m. Then the moon enters Pisces at 7:39 a.m. Venus makes a trine to Mars and Mars is in Cancer. And this leaves on the 25th of May and is exact at 8:41 a.m. Mercury makes its exact parallel with Mars and Mercury's in Aries and this is exact at 9:57 a.m. and the Sun makes a sextile to Neptune and the Sun's in Taurus and Neptune's in Pisces and this is exact at 1:39 p.m. So the moon in Pisces allows us to connect deeply with our intuition and our emotions and other people's emotions. It can allow us to connect with our inner world and trust our gut feelings. So it's a great energy to use to be creative with yourself and others, to meditate, to journal, to look into your secrets, you know, the things that you hide from yourself, because it's 12th house energy. Pisces lives in the 12th house, so all things to deal with looking after your health, helping others look after their health, looking at your addictive habits and how you can overcome them. Venus's quintal to Pluto is a nice sort of energy, but it's all about transforming our relationships and our desires. It supports us to dig deep into what we truly want and how we can create more meaningful connections in our life if these are lacking at the moment as well. Venus's trine to Mars allows us to connect with others on a romantic and creative level and express our desires in a balanced way, you know, not to overindulge, because Neptune energy and sometimes Venus energy, really Venus and Neptune energy can make us overindulge, overdo things and neglect our responsibilities, right? And, you know, neglect looking after our overall well-being. The Sun sextile to Neptune again supports us to connect with our higher self, our higher purpose, and explore our intuition and tap more into our artistic creative side, you know. But the moon void of course can bring confusion for the few hours it's void of course, so it's just a reminder to stay flexible today and over the next few days as well. The moon's north node going retrograde can make us feel uncertain about our life purpose and direction and our relationships, you know, so we can just use this energy to reflect on, are we on the right path, how we can get on the right path. So a lot of energies this week is supporting us to do that, you know. And Mercury's power to Mars brings intensity to our communication and thoughts, so it's important to stay calm and avoid impulsive decisions and behaviours and just be mindful of other people's reactive words and boundaries, and not to laugh, but, you know, give people grace, because this energy can make us a bit fiery, you know. So the best use of these aspects is to be open to our intuition, trust our gut feelings, create meaningful connections or continue to develop our bonds, you know, to express our desires in a balanced way, and to be flexible to avoid impulsive decisions, you know. On the 23rd of May, we have the moon entering in void of course at 10:13 p.m. and the balsamic moon starting at 23:15, so 11:15 p.m. So Saturn's parallel to the moon's north node is exact. I talked about this aspect because this is governing us all this week. So it's exact today, the 23rd of May at 1:39 a.m. and leaves us on the 25th of June. Mars sextil to Neptune, where Mars is in Cancer and Neptune's in Pisces, affects us for the next couple of days and is exact at 5:40 p.m. today. And Mercury is semi-sextile to Chiron is exact at 9:05 p.m. So Mercury in Taurus brings grounding over the next couple of weeks to our communication, making us more practical and deliberate in our communication, you know. So expect conversations to become slower, steadier and more focused on tangible results, you know, results we can touch, you know. This is a great time to negotiate, plan or discuss financial matters, as Taurus energy loves stability, you know. The moon void, of course, reminds us to pause and reflect, you know. Some of you may want to avoid making major decisions or starting new projects as this energy is transitional. Instead, we should use this time to unwind, meditate or simply be present in the moment with ourselves and others. The balsamic moon energy over the next few days allows us to release and surrender what no longer serves us, you know, and reflect on whether we're ready to release, whether it's a habit, mindset or pattern, you know. It's time to make space for renewal, make room for the new, you know. Mars is sextile quadrant to Neptune, you know, it brings a mix of inspiration and frustration, anxiousness, you know. Mars in Cancer adds to the emotional intensity in our actions, while Neptune in Pisces wants us to align more with our emotional, psychological and spiritual needs, you know. So we should use this energy, you know, to be passionate and channel it into creative or healing projects, but we just need to watch out for confusion or being oversensitive, you know, and ignoring red flags, because Neptune energy can always want us to escape reality and be lied to, ignore the red flags, you know, or the red carpets. So this energy reminds us to just watch what we're doing today, you know, try not to overindulge in drugs or alcohol or anything that's toxic to you in excess, right? Mercury makes a sextile to the moon's north node, so this allows us to have a beautiful time, whether alone or with others, have those meaningful conversations and thoughts that deepen our connections and create emotional understanding, you know. So we've got Mercury making a semi-sextile to Chiron, so this allows us to heal through our communication, you know, and to repair, mend relationships or release past pain. The best use of today's energies with Mercury in Taurus: choose our words carefully and focus on what truly matters. We can use the balsamic moon energy to release what's holding us back and prepare for fresh beginnings. We can use Mars's energy to balance emotional intensity with Neptune's spiritual guidance to avoid frustration and stay inspired, you know, and just to be open to having meaningful conversations that's been weighing on us, and allow our vulnerability to come through and deepen our relationships and connection with ourselves. You know, it's a perfect day to ground ourselves, to release and align with our higher purpose, or try to figure what our higher purpose is, you know. So on the 24th of May, Mercury makes a semi-sextile to Jupiter, the moon enters Aries and the sun makes a trine to Pluto. So the moon enters Aries at 9:19 a.m, Mercury's semi-sextile to Jupiter is exact at 8:16 a.m, and Mercury's in Taurus and Jupiter's in Gemini, and the sun's trine to Pluto is exact at 4:15 p.m, and the sun's in Taurus and Pluto's in Capricorn. So the moon in Aries allows us, it gives us the fire, the passion, the motivation. We can be more driven to take action, you know, so we can have a desire to take the lead in our life, take on a new direction, you know. It's time to open up to and embrace our inner warrior and take bold, courageous and brave steps towards your goals, you know. Mercury semi-sextile to Jupiter helps us to set ideas, learn new things. I mean, some of you may even receive some good news, you know. We just have to be careful to not over promise things or get carried away in the big ideas, you know, as I was saying at the beginning of the week of this energy. The sun's trine to Pluto, it supports us in being open to change and transforming our lives and taking charge, taking back our power, becoming more empowered, and it helps us to have a more deeper sense of purpose. It allows us to tap into our inner strength and resilience, and we can just feel like, yes, I've got this, you know, I'm capable of overcoming our challenges. So the best use of today's energies is to be open to your inner warrior, take the lead, you know, don't let others overstep your boundaries, don't overstep others, but also be optimistic and stay positive, but also keep your feet on the ground. You know, we've got Mercury and Taurus allowing us to do this week and over the coming weeks. You know, this week is all about action, growth and empowerment, being open to newness, you know, and working on healing our long-term wounds while building our resilience and working towards our personal growth, you know. So yeah, you know, allow the energies of this week to allow you to be open and empathetic with yourself and others, and to share ideas and learn new things. So yeah, that's the end of the weekly scopes from the 18th to the 24th of May. Take care and see you next time.